Okay. Go ahead.
Wait, the time's running out, you said?
Yeah, time's running out. You have to attack. So.
The time gets stopped because you get passed.
But I think
That's the point.
don't you have more options if you lunge? I mean,
Sure, you have more options, but again, I said that the other guy had probably a little better blade skills or whatever. But so you had to go give it everything you got. What the big difference for me in terms of the bout is that when you lunge and you miss, you're still in the game. When you flesh and you miss, you're out of the town. You're done. You don't have to deal with the risk of staying there if the other fencer is a better fencer.
When you say you're still in the game, you mean you don't mean you
I
can
lunge
do
and
more.
I miss. I have to fence down that distance.
You have to reply.
Yes.
He's going to reply to you,
He's
and
gonna
you have
reply.
to deal with it.
Right.
You get back.
Right.
And it may be multiple actions. Whereas once the flesh happens, either you hit or he's going to do one reply, but then it's done.
Right.
So remember we
Remise,
talked about the 3 actions? You don't get into that situation. Yeah.
remise, you flash, you hit, or you remise.
Well, but the idea here is that you want to
One
stop.
action.
You want to stop the bout so that he can't do any of his fancy blade work or footwork. So flesh is going to take that away. You have to use it at the right time. It's obvious that you have to use it at the right time. And even fleshing against a better fencer, you may end up getting hit. I'm not saying that that's going to do it, but it reduces the risk after that initial action. You need to pick the right time to play. So what's the difference between, okay, and again with distance, what's the difference between pressing and attacking your opponent?
Press.
Okay, you. No, I'm going to let. What's it? This is a little bit different for you because in foil you're always going at it. But Epe, what's the difference? What do you think the difference is between pressing and attacking your opponent?
Pressing, you're trying to draw a reaction. Attacking, you're just trying to hit.
Yeah, you're keeping pressure on your opponent all the time. Keeping pressure on your opponent. Attacking is you're actually going for the hit. And I really want to differentiate the two because if you're pressing your opponent, that's a good way to do a counterattack action. Okay. If you're actually going to if you're so your opponent's backing off the strip. Again, I said earlier that you should never attack a retreating fencer because they're just going to open up the distance so they get the right and lay it in. But you can press the opponent, and I get to throw in something here I haven't said yet, but when I was first teaching fencing, I was teaching from long distance, so basically it's all this and point and getting it out there. Well, over the past 15 years, Epe has changed dramatically. The distance is much closer, and instead of fencing a long distance, a lot of fencers are fencing at the middle distance, and they're becoming very comfortable. So again, I talked about proper distance, and it's going to give you a proper blade work. You're going to find yourself, if you can only do the long distance work, to get pressured back to your end of the strip. And guess what happens when you get back to the end of the strip? They press you because you can't go any farther. Now you're fencing in middle distance. So you need a strong middle distance game. And again, footwork is the only thing that's going to keep you at the right distance to do the right thing. Okay? Again, the footwork is going to enable your blade work. So there's a couple of questions here. You look at your competitors, you look at their flaws, you look at, and then you should look in the mirror. If you see your opponents have flaws, well, maybe you have a flaw too, and you should be a little self-introspective on that. We have what I see a lot, and even in this club, is I see people that will. Well, quite frankly, their footwork is like this. Okay, so going forward is really limited in terms of this. Now you're doing this, and you're prone to hurt your knees too when you're doing something like this. But basically, it's hard to do multiple actions forward. It's awkward.
yeah.
It doesn't flow well. And what I see a lot of people doing to compensate for that footwork is hopping. I mean, they may have explosive hops that are very effective, but they're hops. And once the hop is done, now that they can't control the distance anymore. What are you smiling at? I wasn't looking at you. 1970. Okay, there's not much in it because after a while, after about 8 years, I'd written it as much as I needed to in it. Not true. You always need to keep a book. Okay. All right, so basically, here's an overview. You got to manage the distance, enhance your blade work, and enable it. You got to identify the correct distance with every one of your opponents, and it could be half an inch difference. It's going to be night and day over your results. What I can do the half inch, but there's another problem if the distance becomes greater than you're used to. So there's a range of distance changes. I can do the small ones, but when I get to the big ones, I'm less skillful. So when I go up against posters, it takes me a long time to identify that distance and to start working within that distance to see what I need to do. But this is a skill you need to develop, is identify the proper fencing distance for an opponent, which will change over a 15-touch bout, which will change. And there are sneaky old devils, not me of course, that will fence at a certain distance, and you'll see them with a certain distance. And when it really counts, all of a sudden, their distances open way up. Now that you got to be aware of it. You got to see it. And when you see it, you got to respect it, and you got to make the adjustments immediately. You can't wait. Say, oh, he can't do that again. Sneaky devils will do it, especially the old people. Okay. It's a standard. So blade work. Yeah. Not going to worry about this. Let me go through this real quick. So let me ask you a question. If you have 3 pieces of blade work, how many combinations? So you're doing 3 actions, and you have 3 different types of blade work. How many combinations would you have? Yeah. And if I said that if you didn't reuse anyone, reuse them, it'd be 6. It's 6. 3 times 3 minus 1. Yeah. So you can go through. It's mathematical. I'll defer to Mr. Whitten here, but basically, you don't have to have that many actions to get a phrase going. And a lot of it's just experience. I mean, we can talk about foot touches. We can talk about the touches to the hand, touches to the head. But statistically, 80% of the touches in FA in competition, a high-level competition, and go to the body. 80%? 80%, yeah. That's a lot of second intents till they go through and finish. But, they have so many different options in FA in terms of blade work. You have flicks, picks, beats, counter 6, opposition, blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to get into that. The point being is that there's a lot of different ways to do this. And as one of the coaches here likes to say, everything is possible in FA. Everything's possible. But that could be a problem, too. So again, 3 to 4 blade actions are all you need as basics. I still think that you got to be physically fit, and you have to have great distance control. And then your game can be very simple as far as your blade work is concerned. We only make blade work complicated because we're not at the right distances.
Or you watch too many old movies.
Why are you smiling? Because I know something you do not know. Here's a really important thing. So the job of your hand and the blade is to hit your opponent. It is not to adjust your distance. How many of you have found yourself adjusting your distance by going, when that's the right response? Distance has to come from the feet, not from the blade work. You compromise your blade work every single time you adjust your distance because you've screwed up. I won't say it any other way. You've screwed up in terms of managing your distance. Now, my job as your opponent is to make you screw up. So, it is what it is. But you try to defend the best game you can, you're going to pragmatically adjust the distance a little bit, and there's a skill involved in that. But you want to minimize it. You want to put as much into the legs as possible. And by the way, it's not big steps. It's small, fast steps. Remember that waveform I showed you earlier? You're going to, it's got to be fast and controlled. Okay? By the way, I'll advertise for TJ's footwork class starting next week? Next Saturday. $20 for 4 weeks of footwork